Good afternoon. I'll call River Trust meeting together for December 18th. Committee items from the chairman. Committee activities. I know Gary or Paul or something might have a comment or at least a question or something.
Well, just real quickly, a couple of meetings ago, I asked for a report on the how the Scenic Rivers Commission and the River Trust interact and how that system works, and it had to do with the plan that was going through for the Meridian Landing. And last month we got a report talking about how the process had been worked out, and there had been some good discussions that went on, and we think we have all that worked out, but all we got was a verbal discussion on it. I'd still like to have a written document, maybe so far as to put it into our agenda so that it's in the minutes of how that process that they have concluded, how that's going to work and how it's going to perform in the future for it, if you could, please, Jim.
I'd be happy to get that done.
Brian or Paul, I think that's, the question was raised mainly because of the plant materials and all of that stuff. Did that get solved, or is it getting solved, or do you know?
Mr. Chairman, that's coming up on our February agenda.
Okay, so it's still in process.
It's still in the process, but I think now, as a result of everything that's come up in the last few months, which I think is very good discussion, I think everyone's aware of the fact that there needs to be more interaction in what's going on between our situation and the river as a whole and the city as a whole.
Okay, thank you. Yeah,
I think what we heard last time verbally, like Councilman Marr says, if that is, then the process should work. But I think it's just to make sure that we have that review.
Okay, thank you. Any other committee? Kathy, does your committee have anything? No, thank you. Item 3 is to approve the minutes of November 27th.
So moved.
Been moved and seconded. Anybody have any corrections or additions to those? Please record your vote. So is everybody on? Yep. Thank you. Something off? Somebody off? You want to try it again? Now we got everybody. I thought it looked like we were short something. Thank you. Thank you. Consent docket, we have the sand mining and oil and gas report and the river corridor events update.
Move both items.
Been moved and seconded. Anybody have any comments on those? Record your vote. It's approved unanimously. Thank you. Primary agenda items, receive the report of quarterly meeting of Riverfront stakeholder group. I know it's a written report. Pat, do you have anything you want to say or highlight? No, I've read it.
No, Mr. Chairman, other than it was probably one of the better attended of the sessions. We did reach out to several additional groups that we felt might have an interest, and all of them did appear. Downtown Oklahoma City Incorporated, the Midtown Group, as well as Automobile Alley, all were represented well, in addition to several trustees and others. So would request that the report be received as submitted unless there's questions.
So moved.
Anybody have any questions? No? Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
Record your vote. It's approved unanimously. Thank you. Paul, you got anything on the maintenance other than, I know you've written a little report, but you might bring us up to date?
I really don't have anything to add at this time. I would mention that now that the eastern basin has been drained, we periodically do a survey of the bottom of the river, and a couple years ago we did a survey of the eastern basin, and what we found during the survey has indeed been revealed. There are a couple spots near the outfall of both Brock Creek and Lightning Creek where we've had some substantial buildup of some sediment, and as you're aware, we have a contractor under contract who is doing some sediment removal upstream at the sedimentation basin, and included in that contract is a pay item where if we find these sediment deposits in any or all of the river lakes, we can issue him a work order going and to do some additional sediment removal. So we're looking at possibly issuing him a work order in the next couple of weeks to go into these two areas that we found where we've got reduced water elevations and have him do some, what we refer to as some spot sediment removal. And if we indeed do that, that'll show up on your report next week, or
Is that something
next month, rather.
Is that something he can get done while the basin's down?
He's going to have
That's
to.
the plan? That's the
He's going to
plan?
have to, yeah.
Yeah, but he'll have to do it while it's down this time. is what I'm
Absolutely,
saying.
yes, yeah. So we're looking at issuing him a work order next week or so.
What
Other than
does, I should know, but what's an inverted siphon improvement? What's that?
I'll let Mr. Couch answer that.
Huh?
I'll let
All
Mr.
right.
Couch answer that.
When you put a sewer line in, the grade is critical. You can't, it's got to flow by gravity, so the grade is basically fixed. Well, if you do it through the river, it may be like 4 feet up from the bottom of the river. Well, that isn't going to work. You've actually got to put it under the river so it'll stay there for a long term. And so what you do is you come and you drop it down, and then it comes back up. Where a siphon siphon goes up over, this is kind of like a siphon that goes down, and so that's an inverted siphon. And so the pressure or the flow will drive the wastewater down and then back up to the grade based upon the velocity of the wastewater, which I know is much more than you wanted.
Well, I'm just curious. I mean, yeah, it's the same thing.
There you go.
I just thought I'd ask. I'm just curious if anybody knew, so at least you knew.
Councilman Mars really likes my engineering explanation.
I knew he'd probably like it being an engineer. Paul, thank you. Anything else?
Thank you.
You got any questions, Paul?
Can we hear that explanation in English?
Yeah. I got this part of it. Yeah, I got that part of it, opposed to this part, Okay, I need a motion then to receive the report.
So move.
Record your vote. It's approved unanimously. Next one is receive unaudited and interim financial statements for the period ending October 31st.
Move approval.
Anybody got any questions, comments? Record your vote. Approved unanimously. Receive Central Oklahoma Transportation and Parking Authority call to artists for the sculptural lighting element of the Exchange Avenue lighting. Is anybody going to talk to Jeannie?
Well, just to let everybody know what's going on, we are building a building at Exchange Avenue, as you all know, and part of the city policy is the 1% for artwork, and so we're jumping on that bandwagon, and we'll be putting in, we want it to be something that is lit, it's a lighting element so that it can be seen from the river as well as from the roads and the bridges and possibly even from the highway to draw some attention to our landing at Exchange.
Good. Kathy?
I noticed that the deadline to submit the artist entries has already passed.
Yes, we're going to have to extend the
Okay.
calendar a bit. It's
Very good.
It's highlighted on my copy. The original was, yeah, we have to, have it coincide with all the various board meetings. But
Anybody got any other questions? Need a motion then?
Second.
Then moved and seconded. Record your vote. It's approved unanimously. Thank you. Concur with the Oklahoma City Economic Development Trust in approving Amendment 2, the contract for engineering services for project MC 0360, improvement of the south bank of Oklahoma Meridian, down by the Meridian Landing Promenade.
And MC 0360 is the project we've been talking about for quite a while. That's the one that has had some issues with the Design Review Committee, and it's been through a couple of iterations because of the involvements with the hotels or not involved with the hotels. So there have been a number of changes on it. The changes are outlined in the memo. They include changing of landscaping and hardscaping, changing from lithocrete to colored concrete, some removals of portions of mow strips, changing the plaza railings, just a number of changes that have been made because of the hotels going away, because of design review, because of parks comments, a number of things that have come down the line on the scope of work. So it's a $4,000 change.
Okay. Need a motion or a question?
And so is that what's coming back before our committee in February?
Well, this is the engineering fee
Right.
that's associated with those plans. Yes, sir.
No, the only question that I had, or one question I had on that, it had removal of the mow strip, and I hope that's not just value engineering, because if all those beds are left out there without mow strips, we're in we're in a lot of trouble. So I didn't know whether that was a line item that somebody said, well, we can take this out and then we'd be left without the mow strips or not. So
It says portions of most strips,
Right.
so I think the critical areas are left in.
okay, okay,
But that's something you guys are going to see a meeting in February, is that correct?
that's what's scheduled.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, Larry?
Question from my perspective. We're designing a trail to continue westward from Southwest 15th and Meridian all the way to connect up to Lake Overholser.
That's correct.
As that goes on, is that part of the trail under our purview here, or is it not?
Well, yes, that in maps 3. It's multiple area, yes.
Yeah.
Because it's on river trust land.
Okay, so like things like the signage on there, does that come to us, or does Maps 3 decide what signage will be up, or will it be the same mode of signage that we have on the river right now?
It'll go through both processes, and so it'll come through this board, but I do believe that there will be, try to keep a consistent.
Because it is part of the river, just an extension of
That's
what
correct.
we call the Oklahoma River right now.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I think the one other question I had, and I had forgotten to mention it, was we went from nothing at the parking lot, then a super extensive landscape at the parking lot that was way over, and now we're back to nothing. I hope at some time we can address, because they've taken the trees, they've taken the landscape, everything out, and yet that's the major point where the cruises are. So, to me, I was just hoping we could just get to a manageable landscape, just some trees in the parking lot and all, but do you, Pat, do you?
The move was to take all of the landscape that was in this project out of the parking lot area. That doesn't preclude us from coming back at a later date and taking a look at what might make sense there. But as to this project that was for the landing and the promenade, it's out of that project.
I would just think for the appearance and for the function and all of that very hot parking lot, at some time we ought to look at just a reasonable planting with just trees and grass, and we make it so it will cool that down if we could do that at some point.
Well, if you pull the budget out of the parking lot, where did it go?
If I may, I think that's probably something at appropriate time after the project's finished that I can do with force account crews, with my own employees, sir.
You guys satisfied with that? I mean,
I just think, again, it wasn't in it at first, and we had mentioned why wasn't it, and so then it came back, but it came in with this super extensive landscape, which was probably unsustainable.
Right.
And my thought was, well, let's just get it back to some trees and grass and something that will sit there and complement it, because we are going to have a pretty extensive landscape that's going to be very close to it, and then we're going to go back to a nothing at the parking lot.
But, Mr. Chairman, don't we need to know what's going to be there? I mean, this whole situation, we keep hedging around that Meridian situation, and the way I look at it as chairman of that committee, that's almost like that's a foundation of where we start moving east on the river or west on the river, and if we can't come to an agreement now as to what the vegetation is going to be, are we going to have this on every project that comes along? There seems to be a disconnect in what's going on and what's being recommended to us for approval, and do they not come to your department to ask you
my
first?
department reviewed, yes. And again, I would think that it would be very reasonable to have a second phase that had my crews installing trees in the parking lot area. That would be a reasonable thing to do if it meets the...
do you have budget to do that?
Yes, sir. I'm not talking about very many trees, so yes, sir, I think I could do that.
Wendell plants hundreds of trees on an annual basis throughout the park system, so.
Well, so on the contract with whomever this...
Guernsey.
Guernsey, then so they're doing less than they were before?
In terms of trees, yes, sir.
Well, in terms of the project, if they eliminate the parking lot, is that so there ought to be an amendment coming back with a reduction in fees?
I'll have to check on that, but I believe so.
Well, I don't think the overall project scope has gone down. The price is...
No,
the overall dollar amount hasn't gone down.
Well, I know that. Shouldn't it if they took out the parking lot? That's my question. Shouldn't it? Shouldn't we get a reduction if they're not having to design that?
Well, the parking lot was already in place. It was simply a matter of what landscape was there. We determined that we would not put that value of landscaping on the existing parking lot for reasons that were discussed in a previous meeting and with park staff. So that much has been reduced out of that area, but it's still a part of the overall project that's under Guernsey. We simply took those amenities and placed them elsewhere within the project confines. That makes sense?
No.
Okay, as I said in the council meeting this morning, you've talked long enough, you've confused me now.
Yeah.
Did the landscaping in the parking lot get taken out for financial reasons or for sustainability reasons?
Sustainability primarily.
Now, I thought the discussion was not eliminating all landscape, it was changing to a landscape that would be more easily sustained. And how did we go to a parking lot that has absolutely nothing in it now?
Well, my understanding was that we were to move that landscaping out, and then we can come back at a later date and do that in-house, because, again, our understanding was that the scope of what we wanted to have in that parking lot was more of a lower maintenance regimen, and therefore would be something we could do in-house. It wasn't going to be an extensive landscape. So we moved those amenities that were in the parking lot elsewhere within that Meridian Landing area under Guernsey's design contract. Then we intend to come back at a later date with Wendell's staff and Wendell's help and do something that we think is going to be both attractive and relatively easy to maintain, given the parameters of that parking lot.
So we took items that were unsustainable in the parking lot and moved them down on the river where they're going to be unsustainable.
We actually removed a lot of those kinds of plant materials that Trustee Doherty took a look at from the scope entirely.
But, Mr. Chairman, it would seem the Meridian Landing is one of our key situations on the river, and it would seem that the landscaping there needs to be addressed in detail as to what we're going to have. You don't need people coming off the boat, and here you have a wasteland in the middle of July in Oklahoma with dried up scrub and whatever. To me, I think before that whole situation is approved, we need to determine exactly what the landscaping is going to be, and is it irrigated, Brian, or how they handle it?
I would
know.
Pardon me.
But I mean, to me, that's a very, to me, that situation at that end of the river is a very important core point of the whole situation moving downtown. And if we don't get that sorted out and get it the way it should be, then the whole situation, you wonder what's going to happen in between there and downtown.
I'd be pleased to bring back whatever designs we would propose for the planting of trees and such in that area to the trust, if you please.
I would say, it has been frustrating because we started with a comprehensive plan that went all the way down to the river shore. I went down there. I couldn't imagine how they were going to plant on that in-grade and how they were going to do all that. That got reduced. We kept that, but then they moved it down to the parking lot, but they had all this ground cover in all the medians. And I said, why can't we just leave the trees, get rid of the ground cover, and then turn around and have it sustainable? And now it's come back. So we have significantly decreased the scope of what it was originally. The fees are still the same. In fact, we're adding another $4,000 today to the engineering fees, so we're at $186,000 on that, and I presume the contract's the same. So we have, maybe we're getting more sustainable. It is. I think the point is right that we have decreased that. We have not spread it way on down. We've eliminated a lot.
Just to clarify, this parking lot that we're discussing was not in the original scope of the project ever. And it was determined that we might do some work there, but then later determined we did not want to have the extensive landscape. I think you'll be pleased with what Wendell and his staff comes up with in the way of a master plan for that area that can be done in-house very sustainably and outside the scope of this engineered budget.
Is that right, Brian? So the parking lot was not included in the original discussions?
On the original discussion, it started at the hotel, went to the trail, replaced the trail, and went all the way down to the river. I didn't understand how they were going to do that part from the trail to the river. That was pulled, and at that time the parking lot wasn't in. That was not? Was not.
Okay.
And that was pulled out, so you have this huge amount that's not going to be included now that they're going to leave natural. So I understood they were then going to move it on down to the parking lot. So they moved it on down to the parking lot because you had a huge amount of project that wasn't going to be included, correct? And that's kind of where they reclaimed some of the money that they were able to use for the parking lot?
Yes, but if you will recall, there were also some budgetary concerns with that project as it was originally bid and designed. So by removing these various elements, we were able to get the project back within the budget available for rebidding. And that's the intent of where we're headed with this.
I think when it was, just for clarification, when it was originally done, it had an art piece. It had very, very extensive. When it first came to us 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, then that was sized down considerably to the landscape, and the landscape went on down the hill. Then the hill got removed, and that's when the parking lot got picked up. Now we're not going to have the hill, we're not going to have the parking lot, and we're going to have the top piece.
And it should all be within budget, which is...
What budget?
Well, the original budget for the project was roughly $1.5 million, less engineering fees, survey work, testing labs, and so
Larry,
forth.
you have a question?
Well, yeah, as I have a vested interest in this, as Pat knows, since it's in Ward 3. To take what Paul said, I see two kinds of people being involved in this whole area, from the parking lot to the work that we're talking about here up by the hotels. We're going to have some folks who are going to ride the boat, and they're going to get off the boat and go to their cars at the parking lot, correct? And board the boat from cars. Whatever landscaping that is in there should be significant enough to create a favorable image, as I hear what Paul's saying, and I agree with that. Then we have other people who may be boarding the boat or from the motels, who will be walking along the river. Will they not behind those motels to get back to their motel?
Yes, along the trails behind the motels.
And what I hear here is that all the landscaping has been taken. What are we going to end up with there? That needs to be also of some eye-catching, I would think, capability to say, hey, this is a first-class operation.
It actually is, and all of that will be there. The parts that were removed from the last design are the amenities in the parking lot, and that lower part of the hill, as Brian referred to it, and that is primarily due to budget considerations. This project was, as it came out originally designed, was over budget, so we had to make some strategic cuts. Some of the materials used in sidewalks and other things you'll see, those changes were made also primarily for budgetary considerations. But I think the project overall will still be very attractive.
But we had the original budget that had everything in it to begin with, and then we take out the budget for the parking lot. Is that correct? Is that what we're talking about, the parking lot?
The original budget had no parking lot amenities. The original budget had
Then we took out plant material and all those things and the labor to do what Brian said is never going to work. So we did that, right? So how much did we reduce the budget?
I believe, is there somebody from Public Works, or I don't recall. I think it was on the order of $600,000 that we had to pull.
Okay, so question again, why are we giving them $4,000 more for fees? What are they doing?
Well, that was for redesigning some elements, as I understand it, and Public Works Department negotiated that with the consultant.
My guess is the engineer's telling you it's not their fault you keep changing your mind.
Yeah.
They keep putting hours into redesigning it for us.
Okay, is that what it's for?
It is. It is for a couple of things. This started out as a TIF project to enhance the hotels.
Right, and then they didn't want to participate.
They didn't want to participate, and they wouldn't sign off on it. So then we had a shift, and then we put together this shift, and it was over budget, and so then there were some modifications that came down. Then we took a look at the shift, and other people got involved, and rightfully so came out with some great suggestions on how to improve it. So now we're going back and modifying it again to bring it back in within the original budget of the $1.4 or $1.5 or whatever it was, and we're on the third concept, making some changes on it. So there have been some additional costs to get us to this point.
And then Wendell's going to bring us back something for the parking lot,
Yes.
drawings or something.
Yes, sir, I can do that.
Okay. Kathy?
I have a question on the amenities that have been removed. Will there be restrooms, or has that been eliminated?
There is no restroom provided in this project, nor actually was there ever in this
Mr. Chairman,
project.
wasn't there originally let's say I'm forgetting, a building that we had approved that, subject to funding
Right.
out there? Which
Yeah,
I
we
think
didn't get the funding.
There was originally some plans for pavilions, some restrooms, and some amenities for that ticket building to accommodate that, which included a sewer line, by the way, to get to the area, to have fun, to accommodate the sanitary, or the restrooms, and that has never been a funding source for that.
So, oh, man, never mind.
Anything
Well, it
else?
sounds to me like if we remove the parking lot stuff, if we remove the lower bank stuff, then we're paying $1 million something to landscape from the motels down to the trail? That's it?
There is hardscape, landscape, and more importantly, probably one of the most expensive pieces of this project, if you recall when we reviewed the plans last time around, is the area actually below grade. There are some significant erosion protection elements of an engineering nature that are a part of this, necessary to protect that bank. They're not necessarily attractive amenities, but they're more a matter of protecting the bank.
Mr. Chairman, thinking back to this whole situation, the restrooms and shelter situation, I think, was put on hold because of funding. Isn't that as important, or maybe more important, than landscaping? I mean, if we're wanting people to disembark from the boats in July at 100 degrees, there should be something there in the way of a canopy or protection or shelter or something. Maybe I'm just...
Mr. Downs had a plan to put those improvements in upon some private donations that did not come to fruition on that. This is a reallocation of the TIF dollars that are down there.
Would there be other TIF dollars available? Or do you think that's the end of the...
I'd have to go back and look. That's not a deep pocket on that one, but we could go back and look at the TIF dollars.
If there may be a possibility?
It's just the base and what's been built down there doesn't sustain that much.
Is that in the Dell TIF? Is that what that is, the Dell TIF? And are the hotels in that TIF?
Yes.
Yeah, they're in the TIF. They didn't participate in the, was it the bid? Is that what it was?
Well, the bid's not in place yet. That's something Mr. Mackey's very interested in, getting a bid in place down there for maintenance on Meridian. The Dell TIF was originally set to use the increment from the Dell building to help finance some of the Dell improvements. We made it larger than that, and then some hotels were built in that, and we were able to use that delta to build some of these improvements that we're talking about. But it's a limited amount of funds that are available. I think there may be a little bit beyond this, but I don't think it's a lot.
Not much that's been created already. That's correct. We can visit with finance and come back with a number.
But isn't another motel being built
Yes.
down there?
Yes.
Does that put money into the TIF?
Well, it will, but it won't beyond the projected amount that was already budgeted.
Okay, then another...
I don't know. Does it go that far west?
Well, there is a new hotel site being developed just to the east of the Holiday.
Between the Holiday...
And they're anticipating putting it on
Yeah,
there.
there's a third one going.
Okay.
However...
That would then.
Yeah, it would. However, that hotel that is still yet to come was budgeted as a part of this particular TIF project. So you can't count it twice.
I don't know if it wasn't built, we wouldn't do that. We wouldn't do that.
Okay?
It'll only be budgeted once the thing knows it's going online and what year it's going online. No. No.
So the Scenic River Overlay Committee is going to see this month, sometime, or January sometime?
In February,
February.
Councilman.
In February. And once it comes out of there, it would come to here,
Yes, before it goes out to bid.
and that's when we would see what they're proposing in all these areas.
Yes.
Okay, and what the budget is and all that sort of stuff.
Yes.
Although I suspect maybe Mr. Downs is going to probably do some private briefings prior to then.
Be my guess. Be my guess. Okay. Do we want a motion on this? We have a motion and a second? We need a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? Record your vote. It's approved unanimous with a question mark, I guess. Claims. Approve claims docket.
Move approval.
And move and second. Any discussion? Record your vote. Approved unanimously. Thank you. You have anything to add on your report? It looks like OU and UCO are kind of moving along. Do you have any update on that?
Both are moving. Visited with Dr. Martin on the OU athletic staff as well as the UCO staff, and both indicate they're moving forward. As far as a date certain, I have not been given that, but both are working on draft agreements that have been provided them.
Okay. Any comments or any questions for Pat?
Mr. Chairman, for those of you who did not make the river parade, you missed a wonderful evening.
I heard it was nice.
Superb. Great.
Good, thanks. Any other comments on that? Need a motion to receive his report?
So move.
Approved unanimously, thank you. Any other comments by trustees?
Just a quick comment, and I think it's already, I talked to Wendell this morning, and I believe it's already, the discussions are already moving along, but it came up in our stakeholders meeting, and I've heard it elsewhere. I hope that there's some discussion going on how to coordinate ticket sales between the river cruisers and the canal boats. We've got this whole concept of Zone G is going to go up, they're going to get close, we're going to be able to ride both of them if you want to and all of that, and I hope we get some discussions going on how single point source in various places can sell tickets to both of them, and hopefully the operators are working on that.
Yeah, Jeannie I'd asked her before the meeting, she made a comment that I guess what you're all thinking about doing is maybe you sell wristbands on our cruisers for the canal boats?
Right, they have an online ticketing system. They have a PayPal ticketing system. We have online ticketing. We have Wi-Fi on our boats, which is why on our boats you can just walk up and we'll sell you a ticket right on the boat. You don't have to. Now the issue with water taxi is you can buy a ticket online, but then you have to pick it up in front of the ballpark. So we're working on meeting with the Parks Department, who manages that contract, and the water taxi to propose to them that maybe they would issue us some of their armbands and we could sell them for them and then remit.
And the idea is to have that operational in
Well,
late spring, early summer?
I'd like to have it up. The connection should be finished end of April, early May, which is about when we really start kicking in. We do limited service in April, and then we begin full service in May, and we'd like to have something worked out by that time.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, I think that's very important, we do that. Anything else from trustees? I'd like to wish each of you all a Merry Christmas and all of that, since this will be it, and Happy New Year, come think of it, before we have another meeting. And I'll see you whenever. I can't tell you when, but whenever. So, anyways, anybody else have any comments? We're adjourned. Thank you.